Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons and love are told. Please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you won't miss more stories like this. I had always been careful with the azure necklace, the crown jewel of our latest collection at Radiant Gems. As the CEO, I knew the responsibility wasn't just about business, it was personal. That sapphire piece was valued at $1 million. A staggering figure that had my entire team on edge, especially as we prepared to present it to investors from the Asian market. That necklace was supposed to be the centerpiece, the very symbol of our expansion, and I had locked it in a discreet compartment in my apartment, guarded by the company's strictest security protocols. Or so I thought. It was early morning when I noticed it missing. I had just brewed coffee, trying to steady my nerves before heading into a day stacked with meetings, when I opened the velvet-lined case, and my heart plummeted. The necklace wasn't there. For a moment I thought I was imagining things, that maybe I had placed it in the safe and forgotten. But no, the case was empty. My breath caught in my throat, and a cold wave of panic spread through me. This wasn't just an accessory gone missing. This was $1 million asset tied directly to the company's credibility. The only person who had been in my apartment the night before was my younger brother, Mason. He had swung by, as he often did, dropping hints about needing help with bills and murmuring about opportunities that never seemed to materialize. I remembered how his eyes had wandered, how he had paused by the display stand in the living room where I kept pieces for private previews. At the time, I dismissed it as idle curiosity. Now my stomach twisted with dread. I called him immediately. It rang and rang and rang. No answer. I tried again. Nothing. A terrible certainty lodged in me. Mason had taken it. The thought stung deeper than the missing necklace itself. He knew what Radiant Gems meant to me. He knew the blood, sweat, and countless sleepless nights I had poured into building it from scratch. Yet he had slipped his hand into the very heart of my work, thinking of himself alone. I couldn't afford to lose time. I reached out to my head of security, explaining in clipped words that the azure necklace was missing from my residence. His sharp intake of breath told me everything about the severity of what I was admitting. "Do we escalate to the board?" he asked. My chest tightened. The investors were scheduled for that afternoon. Stalling them without the centerpiece could sink their confidence. But trying to buy time without telling them the truth would make me a liar if word leaked. I asked him to prepare a crisis protocol and discreetly alert our legal team. By mid-morning I had to face the board. Their eyes drilled into me across the polished mahogany table. "How does $1 million piece vanish under your care, Serena?" one of them demanded. My throat felt dry as I explained that the necklace had been taken from my apartment, and that security had been breached. I didn't tell them yet that it was Mason. I wasn't ready to utter that betrayal aloud. But my silence carried its own weight. "If the investors catch wind of this, our credibility is gone," another board member warned. Every word felt like shards of glass slicing deeper. The azure necklace wasn't just missing. It was threatening to unravel years of careful work. I tried Mason again during the lunch break, desperation rising. Still no response. I texted, begged, demanded. Finally, a short reply pinged on my phone. "Relax, sis. I just borrowed it for tonight. It looked cheap anyway." I nearly dropped the phone. Cheap. My vision blurred as rage surged through me. He thought it was costume jewelry, something to impress a date? My hands shook so badly that I had to steady them on the desk. $1 million necklace, months of craftsmanship, the pride of my team, reduced to a party trick for Mason's reckless whims. I reported the theft formally that afternoon, my voice tight as I spoke to the police. Filing that report felt like tearing my family apart with my own hands, but I had no choice. The insurance company demanded it. The board demanded it. My conscience demanded it. Still, shame curled in my gut as I signed my name at the bottom of the statement. The investors were held in limbo with polite excuses about unforeseen delays. My team scrambled to present lesser pieces from the collection, but I could see the skepticism in the investors' eyes, their polite nods hiding doubt. Without the azure necklace, the presentation felt hollow, like a concert missing its lead performer. I promised updates by the end of the week, though my confidence was unraveling. Meanwhile, the police began tracking Mason. I provided them with his photo, his usual hangouts, Even the names of some women he often tried to impress. Each revelation felt like a confession. Yes, my brother was unreliable. Yes, he had borrowed money he never paid back. Yes, I had ignored the warning signs. Even my ex-husband, Damon, had cautioned me years ago that Mason would drag me into trouble one day. His words echoed in my mind now, bitter and sharp. You shield him too much, Serena. One day you'll pay the price. By nightfall, exhaustion weighed on me like an anchor. I sat in my office staring at the skyline, the city lights blurring through unshed tears. I wasn't just the CEO under fire. I was the sister betrayed. Mason's thoughtless theft had left me cornered between duty to my company and ties to my family. I didn't know how the next day would unfold, but I knew this. The necklace was out there, dangling from Mason's reckless hands, and if I didn't get it back soon, everything I had built could crumble in front of me. The next morning began with a phone call that left me trembling. The police had traced Mason to an upscale restaurant downtown. He was seated at a table adorned with champagne and expensive entrees, the kind of place I knew he couldn't afford on his own. And there, around the neck of his date, glimmered the azure necklace, catching the restaurant lights like a beacon of my nightmare. I rushed to the scene, though the officers advised me to stay back. When I arrived, I saw him through the glass windows, Mason, leaning forward with his trademark grin, gesturing dramatically as if the world belonged to him. Across from him sat a woman I recognized from society columns. Vanessa Carlton, known for her wealth and sharp tongue. She was touching the necklace, her manicured fingers tracing the sapphire as though she owned it. My heart thudded so loudly it drowned out the clinking glasses and murmured conversations around me. The police made their move before I could intervene. They entered the restaurant in formation, their voices firm and commanding. The entire place fell silent, all eyes shifting toward the scene unfolding in the corner. Mason froze, his charm evaporating as two officers flanked him. Vanessa looked from the necklace to the badges with dawning horror. And then the cameras flashed. Reporters who had somehow caught wind of the operation crowded outside, their lenses pressed against the glass, capturing every humiliating second. Mason Hayes, you're under arrest for theft, one officer announced, his voice carrying across the restaurant. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My stomach twisted. There was no undoing this. No hiding. My family name, my company's reputation, both were being shredded in real time. I watched as Mason tried to protest. It's my sister's. She said I could borrow it. His words stabbed into me. Vanessa recoiled, pulling the necklace off her neck and dropping it onto the table as though it burned her skin. Mason's eyes darted toward the window, and for a split second, they landed on me. Shock, then anger. Then something like betrayal flickered across his face. The footage was online within an hour. Radiant Gems CEO's brother arrested with $1 million necklace, blared across headlines. Social media erupted, speculating about insider fraud, mismanagement, and family scandals. Radiant Gems stock began to plummet before I could even draft a statement. The board convened an emergency meeting, their voices clipped and furious. You should have controlled this before it went public, one accused. Another sneered. How can investors trust us when the CEO can't secure her own collection? I tried to keep my composure, but inside, I was unraveling. Every word from the board was true. My brother had made me look like a fool, and worse, like a liability. The investors who had flown across the ocean for our presentation were no longer willing to wait. They left with stiff goodbyes, murmuring about reassessing their options. Years of planning, countless negotiations jeopardized because Mason thought the azure necklace was cheap. That night, I faced my parents. I had expected concern, maybe even disappointment directed at Mason. Instead, I was met with icy glares and sharp words. How could you let your brother be humiliated like that? My mother demanded. My father's voice was harsher still. He's family, Serena. You should have handled it privately. Now the whole world sees him as a criminal. I felt my jaw tighten. He stole from me. From the company. From all of us. He's your brother, my mother shot back. You've always put that company above family. This is the consequence. The injustice of it burned. They were defending him, the one who had jeopardized everything, while I was left standing alone, vilified for protecting what I had built. My chest ached with betrayal deeper than Mason's theft. It was the realization that my parents valued the illusion of family loyalty over the truth, over accountability. Mason sat in a holding cell while lawyers debated bail, and I was left to clean up the wreckage. Insurance demanded payment of the deductible, which I covered personally. I forfeited my annual bonus, announcing to the board that I would take responsibility for the breach. Security protocols were overhauled overnight, biometric safes installed in every executive residence. These actions were meant to reassure the shareholders, but the sting of humiliation lingered. Vanessa Carlton reached out unexpectedly. She requested a private meeting, her voice smooth and sharp over the phone. When we met, she didn't waste time with pleasantries. Your brother wanted me to believe he owned that necklace. He bragged about radiant gems as though he ran it himself. Do you know what I think? He's not just reckless, he's bitter. Bitter that you're the successful one. Her words pierced me. I remembered Mason's resentful mutters over the years, his digs about me being the golden child, while he struggled to find direction. I had dismissed them as jealousy, never imagining they would curdle into something destructive. Now Vanessa's warning carried weight. Mason wasn't just reckless. He was dangerous to my company's future. Still, the most painful moment came later, when Mason finally called me from jail. His voice dripped with venom. You think you're better than me, Serena? Always lording your success over everyone. Well, congratulations, you've ruined your own company. All because you couldn't cover for your own brother. My hands trembled as I held the phone. You did this, Mason. You stole from me. From Radiant Gems. From everyone who depends on us. His bitter laugh echoed through the receiver. Maybe I just gave the world a taste of what happens when you care more about your precious company than your family. I hung up, my heart shattering under the weight of his words. For the first time in my life, I realized Mason didn't just want to borrow from me, he wanted to drag me down. And with the world watching, he had nearly succeeded. The weeks that followed Mason's arrest were some of the hardest of my life. Every day brought fresh headlines, each one twisting the knife deeper. Some painted him as a reckless playboy, others as a victim of my ambition. The narrative spiraled beyond my control. And no matter how many statements I released, the damage to Radiant Gems felt irreversible. Investors withdrew cautiously, board members whispered about my leadership, and employees looked at me with a mix of sympathy and uncertainty. It was clear I had to take a stand, not just as the CEO but as a sister who had allowed family ties to blur the lines of accountability. I visited the district attorney's office with trembling hands, carrying a folder of evidence, text messages from Mason, financial records of his debts, proof of his repeated recklessness. It felt like betrayal carved in paper, but I knew the company's survival depended on it. I can't protect him anymore, I told the DA quietly. He has to face the consequences of what he's done. The words caught in my throat, but when I said them, I felt a strange release, like shackles finally falling away. The board was furious yet relieved when I confirmed I would not shield Mason from prosecution. For once, my parents' opinions no longer swayed me. They called me heartless, cold, even cruel, insisting that blood should come before business. But I had spent too many nights staring at my ceiling, haunted by the thought of employees losing jobs, shareholders losing faith, and years of sacrifice crumbling because I couldn't draw the line with Mason. I chose to let the law take its course. Meanwhile, I sought to repair what was left of Radiant Gems. I established an employee crisis fund, financed partly by my own salary, to reassure the team that their livelihoods mattered more than optics. I tightened security to the strictest standards in the industry, even inviting independent auditors to review every process. Slowly, cautiously, the narrative began to shift. The same outlets that had crucified me started to call it a lesson in corporate accountability. Some investors returned, moved by my transparency and willingness to bear personal costs. When Mason's trial began, I didn't sit in the front row. I chose to watch from the shadows, hidden beneath a scarf and dark glasses. Seeing him in the defendant's chair was surreal. His arrogance had dulled, replaced by a haggard weariness. The charges were read aloud. Theft, misrepresentation, and violation of security protocols. Mason didn't look at me once, but when Vanessa Carlton testified about how he had used the necklace to elevate himself, her words were clear and damning. I felt no triumph, only a hollow ache that it had come to this. The court showed leniency, considering his lack of prior convictions, and sentenced him to mandatory therapy and community service. It wasn't the punishment some board members wanted, but I knew it was better this way. Mason needed help more than he needed prison bars. Still, I kept my distance. Letters from my parents arrived, full of anger and disappointment, but I didn't bend this time. Boundaries had to hold, even when they hurt. 1 year later, I stood at a global jewelry conference in Singapore, delivering a keynote address about crisis management, resilience, and the importance of drawing hard lines between personal life and corporate duty. The hall shimmered with chandeliers, and rows of suited executives leaned forward as I spoke. My voice didn't waver. Radiant Gems survived not because we avoided failure, but because we faced it with honesty. I learned that protecting those you love doesn't mean shielding them from consequences. It means allowing them to grow through them. When the applause filled the room, I caught sight of Mason at the back. He wasn't polished, not dressed in designer suits or flashing arrogant smiles. He looked smaller, quieter, as though life had finally humbled him. Therapy had softened his edges, and for the first time in years, his eyes didn't carry bitterness when they met mine. We didn't speak then, but a nod passed between us. A fragile thread of understanding stretched across the space. I had saved the company, but perhaps in some way I had also saved him. As I walked off stage, I felt lighter. Radiant Gems was thriving again, the scars of scandal now woven into a stronger foundation. And Mason was beginning his own journey of healing, no longer pulling me under with him. Revenge hadn't been about destroying him, it had been about refusing to let his destruction become mine.
Moral lesson.
Hello guys, before I end this story, I want to leave you with this lesson. Sometimes the deepest betrayals come from those closest to us. We convince ourselves that loyalty means covering for them, forgiving endlessly, and shielding them from the truth. But real love, real loyalty, is allowing them to face the consequences of their actions, even when it hurts. By drawing boundaries, we not only protect ourselves, we give them the chance to confront their own mistakes and grow. When I refused to save Mason from the mess he created, it wasn't cruelty, it was a form of love I hadn't understood before. He needed to stumble so he could finally find his footing. And I needed to let go of the guilt that came with choosing my company, my team, and my own sanity. So to everyone listening, never be afraid to set boundaries, even with family. Protect your peace, guard what you've built, and remember that accountability is not the opposite of love, it's a part of it. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and drop your own thoughts in the comments. Your lessons matter too.